You got a message?
Yes, I need to do this. It's a belated happy birthday to Percy Trinibua Jr. of OMD Media Research. Percy, hey, Percy Trinibua Jr. of OMD Media Reach, belated happy birthday to you. And it's from all of us here at Multimedia Group to you, Percy Trinibua. Yes, so let's get into the discussion about who becomes speaker and who becomes majority or minority leader, because there's that discussion here and there. But look, we have precedents. Even though at the time we didn't have this kind of situation, because at the time the NPP had on its own 128 out of the 230 seats. The PNC had 4 seats, the CPP had 3, there was 1 independent, and the NDC had 94 seats. Now, at that time, Peter Alajete was Speaker of Parliament, and the NPP had indicated they wanted to change Peter Alajete. So they brought Ebenezer Bejina Sechi Hughes, and the minority NDC, according to Alban Bagbin, had assurances from some of the majority members that they would also prefer Alajete. So he proposed Peter Alajete, and Alajete, before his death, would tell you that he accepted that to give the indication that he did not willingly decide to step down, but his party had decided not to present him. He was sending a signal. But what happened in there is that you saw that when it was put to a vote, 136 to 94. But what that did was that it cost the NDC a second deputy speaker, because when they put forth Ken Jirasa, Malik Al-Hassan Yakubu was also proposed by the NPP, and he won. We have a situation where the NPP...
And then they got in Freddie Blade to also become a deputy speaker, because you can't have 2 deputy speakers from the same party.
And we've been talking about that. And so what I was going to say earlier, around during news review, was that in that situation, Freddie Blade was already first deputy speaker from the previous parliament. And Ken Jirasa, who was first deputy speaker during the NDC regime and became second deputy speaker when the NPP took over, was going to be proposed as second deputy speaker again. But then Malik Al-Hassan Yakubu comes in. Now, my understanding of, this whole, you can't have, all the 2 deputy speakers from the same political party, is the simple reason that, look, even if you are in a form of a coalition government, as we saw at the time in Parliament, let me just use that phrase, for Parliament, because at the time, even though the NPP had majority, you had the PNC and the CPP admitting to do business with the NPP. Mind you, the PCP, which later mainly became the CPP in 1996, went to Parliament together with the NPP. Under the Great Alliance. So, the NPP itself presented Freddie Blade of the CPP as first deputy speaker, and then presented Malik Al-Hassan Yakubu as second deputy speaker. Under the current situation, the independent member for Fomena is not a member of the NPP. He has been sacked. And the speaker got him out of Parliament.
Yes.
Because the NPP appealed to the speaker to say, this guy has been sacked and so should leave Parliament. And that, for many watchers, was a bit, problematic, because we have seen instances where Joe Osei-Owusu in 2012 decided in the last 3 months to go and stand on the ticket of the NPP. I do not remember Joe Osei-Owusu being asked to leave Parliament. It did not happen. Shaba Sete Jeba did same. Nanaya Ofori Kuregu of Bosome Freho did same. Nothing happened to him. And so it was a practice then that, your final quarter, if you're an independent candidate and you want, and Boniface Abubakar Sadiq did the same thing when he came on a ticket of as an independent candidate in the 2000 elections, and then crossed to become a member of the NPP to contest the Salaga election of 2004.
So now we have a situation where someone who the speaker sacked effectively from Parliament is being asked to vote for the same speaker who sacked him. And he also remains the only alternative if the MPP decides to punish the NDC, if you put it that way, and decide not to allow the NDC have a seat in terms of the deputy speaker role. It means that the only other person they can get, because this time around there's no PNC, there's no CPP.
No other party.
It means at best they can get one deputy speaker, then they have to give the other deputy speaker to Fomena.
Yes,
to Fomena, yes, in order to get the two. So it's really...
I want to even challenge the Fomena MP's eligibility for deputy speaker. And I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm just,
Because the constitution says it must be a political party.
Yes. Okay, so, can we resolve that? Can we think about it for a moment? An independent candidate, is that not by definition the opposite
of what?
Of a member of a political party?
What the framers of the constitution.
Yeah, in the context of parliament. If you are an independent candidate, the definition is that you don't belong to a political party.
Yes.
So if you don't belong to a political party, how do you qualify to be
Well, the constitution says you should not. The two deputy speakers should not belong to the same political party.
But it doesn't say you should not belong to a political party.
It doesn't say that. Should not belong to the same political party. Under the circumstance, he does not belong to the NPP.
But
does not belong to any political party.
It suggests that you must be part of a political party.
Well, it says you
must be a member.
But it says but you see, once you are a member of parliament, and the constitution says that deputy speakers should be members of parliament, unlike the speaker. So if you're nominated as speaker, you should resign before you contest for the position of speaker. The constitution says deputy speakers should be members of parliament. And so the first line of becoming a deputy speaker is that you should be a member of parliament.
Yes.
Is he a member of parliament? He's a member of parliament. And it says the two deputy speakers should not belong to the same political party.
Very good. And he does not belong to the NPP.
A political
he does
party.
not belong to a political party.
Yes.
And so for my understanding is that the young man, the old man, qualifies to become deputy speaker. But...
And this is where I disagree with you.
Sure.
Because, Winston, I made the point earlier that the MPP cannot be seen to be one breath saying that, this gentleman is going to work with us, so he's going to sit with us, and that is what is guaranteeing us our majority. And then in another breath, they turning around to say that, he's not a member of the NPP, and so he qualifies to become a second deputy speaker. I think the framers of the constitution found it wise to suggest that, yes, there's the need for that consensus building, and we need to have deputy speakers or deputy speakers of parliament not coming from the same political party. That sort of suggests that at any point in time where you have a majority and a minority, the deputy speakers of parliament will come from both sides. And that has been the practice. So in this case,
except 2005, where both came from the majority.
To an extent, people were voting with the majority.
People were voting with the majority, but not necessarily
from
the majority.
Yeah.
And so to say now that the MPP now calling the bluff of the NDC to say, yes, you better cooperate. Otherwise, we are going to give the second deputy to the Fomena MP. It's quite disingenuous, to say the least, because I think that the whole point of having second deputy speakers or two deputy speakers coming from two different political parties is to actually foster this consensus building that the framers of the constitution.
The danger of giving to the Fomena is also that, per the standing orders, if the deputy speaker is presiding on an issue, he cannot vote if he is presiding. Yeah. And so the danger of giving to Fomena is assuming he is first deputy speaker, and for some reason the speaker is not around, and there's an important vote that they need to do. It means that at that point in time it will be 137, 136.
And in fact, actually, no, it will be if it's the independent, then it will be 137, 137.
But he will not be. So
he would not.
Okay, so it will be 137, 137, and
right.
so
it's actually more dangerous if the NDC has a deputy speaker who is in the seat during an important vote. Okay, that's more dangerous because then the NDC would definitely have 136. And the MPP would then have 137 plus the independent, so then the majority will be clear. if it's an important vote, it's more dangerous for the NDC, except that if the NDC NDC deputy is the one in the seat, he could defer the vote to a later date when he's not the one in the seat.
And this goes to both political
there
parties.
will be a lot
because
of chess
where
played.
where you have the speaker not being able to sit and a deputy speaker having to actually preside over the proceedings.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, if it is the MPP side, what then becomes of that vote?
But they have the independent as their ace in the hole.
But then you would have the 137 of the NDC as well.
So it becomes,
The 137, 137.
that's right. So at least that is a tie.
And that is why.
But I'm saying that if it's an NDC
Yeah, I get your
deputy
point.
speaker,
I get
then
your
they
point.
lose the vote.
But that is to say that the outstanding Techiman South would still go for the MPP after the petition is heard.
Yeah, that is to assume that.
That is to
but
assume.
but I
Yes,
guess
yes,
it explains why, I mean, both parties are fielding candidates for the speaker election.
Exactly.
Because if you have the speaker, it means that what you have to now do is that you call for the vote when obviously
Yes.
you are able to do the analysis and look at the
Exactly.
numbers. And that
Exactly.
explains why they are not really, I guess they are seeing the deputy speaker as, okay, let's think about that after we are done with the
Yeah,
speaker.
but but you know, the other thing also, which we must talk about, is that, look, and I mean, we had discussions with Haruna Idrisu, and he said, look, Parliament, most of the time, we reach consensus and, you know, discuss these issues.
Except on the controversial issues.
Yes, on the controversial
Ejapa.
issues. Yes,
And those are the issues that bring
yes,
problems.
on the
That's
controversial
the only
issues.
time it matters.
But,
when it's
but,
controversial.
but I mean, but if you are a government with 137 seats in Parliament, this is not. I mean, you should forget about Ejapa. Let me continue. Let me continue because I mean, you can't do the things you did when you had 169, even though you may have majority. The problem is that if you're going to appoint
A majority of your ministers from Parliament. Yeah.
some of them may be outside the country
Exactly.
at the point.
Exactly.
I mean, serving the country. And so the government would always fall short.
Yeah.
And we have seen instances when I used to report from Parliament that when it's time for a vote, you see ministers just walk in because they are being whipped to come in. You see them just show up, they walk in. But look, when it comes to the Petroleum Revenue Management Act of 2011, Mohamed Mubarak Muntaka moved an amendment calling for a national development plan to be funded by the the annual budget funding amount. His own side did not support him. It was the minority NPP that supported him. So there could be instances where one person may come up with an amendment that would have the support of another side. And when it happens like that, if he decides to vote, and he was put to a vote and he lost, but he had the support of the minority. So if it happens like that, and you have one person, let's say, one MPP person deciding to do this, or one NDC person deciding to do this, and he has the support of the NPP or NDC, it could switch it, to the other side. Because once one goes off, it goes to the other direction.
Let's not forget
and
the
that's
other
what
thing.
makes this particular parliament very interesting. But what I told you yesterday, you come in, yes, you come in. But I
I
told
was
you
just,
something.
don't forget. I was just going to say, what makes it even more interesting is the fact that they insist on secret voting,
Yes.
secret ballot. So what you are describing can really happen. It can really happen where people vote their conscience, and then the outcome is a shock.
To
You know,
But one of the first tasks given Anodompre,
The whip.
the whip.
yes.
You remember?
Yeah, the whip system. They
It's
said
to
they intend
ensure.
to implement it.
Is to ensure
That secret or no
which
secret.
secret. You see how they vote.
It's our caucus vote. Go around and
Go around and check.
who
Look.
you are voting for.
I remember very well on the 7th of January 2005, I was seated watching. The majority leader was very close to where the MPs were when they're coming to put it in there. He was watching. So if
Is
you
that
realize,
even- is that
so
allowed?
if you realize,
The whip,
if you realize,
the three line whip,
No.
you have to go by what
No,
the
I
party.
mean watching, coming to watch
Kojo.
everybody's vote. Is
See,
it allowed?
a lot
see,
is at stake
by
here.
the standing orders?
and I'll quote another
It's a secret
person.
It's a secret vote.
See, I'll quote
It's
another
supposed
person.
to be a secret
Let me
vote,
let,
so-
let me just tell you this. If you look at that, he was making sure that if you are voting, he will check to ensure that you are voting the right way. Now the MPP had 128 in Parliament. The PNC had decided to join them. That gives you what? The PNC had 4. That gives you 132. The CPP 3. That gives you what? 135. The independent joins in, becomes what? 136. Did they not get 136 in that vote? I'm just trying to make you understand how the system works. Okay, they will stand there and be watching.
I want to know if that's legal. Because you see, all of this is supposedly being done in the name of the people.
Yes.
Okay, in the name of the constituents.
Before Benedicta comes in
all...
with the legalities, let me continue by saying that the reason why the MPs themselves sometimes do this is that I remember Dan Botry again saying that, Abraham here General Secretary, I'm a talk Parliament, but I won't support the government agenda, but make sure so Prime is very the amount. I will make sure your premise is difficult for you the next time if you don't support government agenda.
Are they still going to toe that line? They saw what happened to them in the last election.
Exactly.
Does the party even still have that threat to hold over MPs after what just happened?
Well, if the party passes you unopposed, the people will decide whether you go or not.
Exactly. Does the party want to take that risk
but in a
with
lot
any
of the
more
safe
of their
areas, they
MPs?
were able to go through. It was the leaning areas that affected them the most.
This is fascinating. I mean, this next parliament, and that's why I said yesterday that I actually don't expect them to work together the way the president and many other politicians seem to be saying, the people have spoken, they want us to work together. I don't actually expect them
I think
to
they'll work together. It's just when it comes to the Japan and those issues, the controversial issues.
Yeah, and
that
that's
is
the
when
only time when it matters.
That is when the
But you
working
see,
together will not come in.
Muntaka, Honorable Muntaka said something that's quite instructive. That he says that, yes, the MPP says that they want to work with them, but since the election, not a single engagement with the current minority side, and which is quite telling that we have the president even coming to the floor of Parliament to say that, yes, Ghanaians want us to work together and we would be working together. And then behind the scenes, we are having the
work together.
Exactly. And so we don't, you see, all these chess games that we are witnessing, we know that it's interesting for students of politics and political, the media and people interested in politics generally. But I don't think that the people of Ghana are so much interested in the games that would be happening in Parliament as they are interested in the development that the government and Parliament, all the arms of government are supposed to be implementing. So we must see the current majority side reaching out, and today we should see signs of that. We shouldn't see, this competitive spirit going into the elections. Yes, it's important, but we are expecting them to start having the engagement and the consensus building now before the inauguration.
When the controversial issues come up, that is when we will know whether they intend to work together or not. But as it stands, I really don't see it. I want to say something, though, just before I bring in one of our guests who's joining us via Zoom. All of the lawyers who are listening, please, if you have an answer to this question, I'd love to hear it. Is there any legal way by which Parliament, which is supposed to be a master of its own standing orders and rules, is there a way of compelling Parliament legally to change the way they vote so that all MPs' votes are recorded, put on the record, so that those who voted for them know how what decisions they are making on their behalf? Is there any legal way of compelling Parliament to apart from in certain circumstances, always vote on the record and for the vote to be known, rather than acclamation, the ayes have it, or secret ballot being the norm? Can Parliament be compelled to vote on the record at all material times so that constituents know how their MPs are voting? I'd love a legal answer to that. And of course, you are here with us. We'll hear from you as well on this. But first, a quick good morning to Professor Peter Quartey, who joins us over the phone. Professor Quartey, of course, a friend of the show. Prof, how are you doing this morning?
Very well, Kojo. Good morning to you, your panelists, and your viewers and listeners.
Excellent. Professor Peter Quartey, of course, is an economics boffin at the University of Ghana, and we'll be hearing from him on this and other issues when we come back from these messages.
What would you do if you have the choice to do anything in life? Build your dream house, take very good care of your family, and plan for a comfortable retirement. Plan a befitting funeral for your loved ones when they depart. How would you live if you knew there was a friend waiting to support you on all of your life's choices?
You have such a friend in Glyco Life Insurance. Glyco Life has all the plans to meet your life's needs. Your child's education, your life savings, your mortgage, funerals, redundancy, and your retirement, and takes the burden off your shoulders. So go ahead and live life to the fullest today with Glyco Life Insurance plans. And remember that all our policies are hedged against inflation. Talk to Glyco Life on 0302 218 500 or 246 142. Also visit our website at www.glycolife.com or any of our branches nationwide for more information.
Glycolife, we cushion you for life.
Glyco, we cushion you for life.
Same great bang. Because the greatest things are born from the smallest of thoughts. Just as your seeds in a rich soil grow to become trees that bear fruits, the Agricultural Development Bank, ADB, helps you sow, invest, nurture, and grow your personal and business plans by serving you with years of banking ingenuity and experience in agribusiness, corporate and commercial banking, consumer finance, e-banking, and many more through our networked branches across the country. Whatever the culture, whatever the dream, we grow with you. Call us today on 0302-210-210 or visit www.agricbank.com. ADB, truly agric and more.
Check it out, y'all. Fedi kind, Munina Munya Maso, or Brafo Becking kind, the Bremani Gisem, and Concord Jessica kind, Wapumaba kind.
We lead, others follow. This is Joy 99.7 FM.
Sorry, Hana, who better, or soft what they fraka, crap, baby, fa, ni or ya, go, no, mama, so my fire, this time I jump and I never did lose God. They make God so, I bet to when it's so, me boss.
Joy 99.7 FM.
Check it. For a month for my thinking, saying, keep life, don't pay, baby, I make a it try me crusade. Now me a boy, I feel me a king, your content, betray me a beer, Metasha my do timber to me, so I'm a more than so proby, Namumpia, Yamede Mammy, me fan a Bentia, Bessie Jama Rap, yet the Abomidia, a Christo 4 time at you pie and Tocha. I love what I come for the Chivia, you were to me crata, Metu Jevia, Messiah, and a joke, and a penny area, Messing, I am movement, I didn't want Casa, oh, mammy, and can't show. So your penny Casa, come in Pacho, and you are one on Fanta, hotel, Abu Fracket to our means to find a show. As you let a fine tico, open again, Chon, I feel I'm a do it. French never see me more who trap bien. Try again, catch a one son, I watch, I say, when inside it, for you by mistake, when I'm white, I didn't catch a one son, I watch, I say, when inside it, for you by mistake, when I'm white.
All rights for the hip life, right reverend, the rap legend, executioner / lieutenant. It's been 3 years exact, apologize for that. Now he back, still blitzing the A-dash, still laid back, still battling fake cash, still spitting lyrics, transmitting through his dreadlocks. All brought for type of rapper, the battle for mics. Way before God created man, breathing in life. Way before the whites, before the invention of mics.
Who Born You by Mistake, or Braford there, setting the tone for the 90s Jam, which is kicking off this Friday. We'll tell you how it's going to happen when and where and all of that. So stay tuned for that. Right now, though, you're welcome back to the Super Morning Show on Joy. And we're having a conversation about how Parliament is going to turn out. Professor Peter Kortey joins us on that in just a moment. Before that, though, look, they come in different shapes and sizes. And the best ones are at Kingdom Books and Stationery. I'm talking about temperature guns with precise non-contact measurements, automatic data hold and auto power off. They come with backlight LCD displays, and you can set your alarm values, among other things. If you want to buy in bulk, just call Kingdom Books and Stationery on 050-140-1050, or you could try 0244-311-955. You could also walk into any shop, Kingdom Books and Stationery shop across the country, or their head office, which is at Busu Akweji. They're waiting for you. Now, do you send or receive money to and from other African countries? Then listen, UBA Africash is how you should do it. Any country in Africa that has a UBA will be able to give you this facility. The UBA Africash will allow your remittance to be received in real time. It's secure and it helps you to quickly send and receive funds to any location where UBA exists. So listen, you don't have to be a UBA account holder. Just walk into any branch or partner agent with a valid ID and they will accept international passport, national ID, or driver's license, or even voter's ID, and you can send and receive your money. You want to know more? Call the 24/7 Customer Fulfillment Center. The number is toll-free if you're with Vodafone and Airtel Tigo. It's 0800-833-833, or you could just dial 0302-634-060. Africash, fast and secure means of transferring money across Africa. UBA, Africa's global bank. Now, Professor Peter Kortey joins us. We also have Joseph Opoku Gakpo, who is our parliamentary correspondent. Hi, Joseph. Good morning to you. Right, I don't think we have Joseph yet, but we do have Professor Peter Kortey. Prof, you've been listening to our conversations about Parliament and how things are likely to unfold tonight. It's a big make or break night for Parliament and really for the democracy of our nation. I wonder what your thoughts are on how things have unfolded so far and what might be the outcome tonight. Right, I don't know if...
It looks like there's a background noise.
Right, Prof. Kortey, can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you, yes.
Wonderful. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on how the leadership of Parliament might turn out tonight.
Well, I despite the discussions, I expect the leadership to turn up in their numbers and also do the needful.
So we're trying to look into the crystal ball and see whether or not we might have either Alban Bagbin or the current speaker, Reverend Professor Michael Quay, as speaker by the end of the vote tonight. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'm not a political scientist, but let me put on my political economy lens. It looks like we have a balance 137 on each side, but then the independent candidate would join the MPP. So it means they might have at least an additional vote. And if granted that everybody votes according to his party affiliation, then certainly the current speaker, Professor Michael Quay, might win the vote. But that is granted that everybody goes according to what is being said. It's a secret ballot, I'm told, so anything could happen.
Okay, well, let me bring Joseph Opoku Gakpo in here. He's our parliamentary correspondent. Joseph, thank you very much for joining us. And we know that you are in Parliament. You've been engaging with members of Parliament. Tell us, it's happening, well, at midnight, we'll see. the newly elected members of parliament, after they are sworn in, electing a speaker. Now, how is it likely to go? And for many Ghanaians, the question they're asking, even before the speaker swears them in, who is likely to emerge victorious? And what are you picking from your conversation with the MPs?
So yes, the MPs will elect their speaker, and the speaker will then swear in the MPs. It's likely to be a very long night. If you ask me to look into the crystal ball, I will dare not, except that to a large extent, it makes sense to want to agree with Professor Kote's projection based on his political economy, knowledge, that yes, if Fomena is voting with the MPP, then they may end up taking the extra vote and end up electing Michael Quay as the speaker. But you may never know. A lot of things could happen. Professor Michael Quay has very interesting history with a lot of the MPs on both the majority and minority side. You can expect that the Whips will be very active in trying to get the folks on their side to vote one way or the others. In the NPP, Whip would want to get virtually all his people to vote for Professor Michael Quay. The NDC people would do same. But of course, they have their history, and sometimes some people do the analysis. They reference past relationships in the sense that Professor Michael Quay's child has run with some individuals in the house and try to unseat them, that they didn't work out, which is a history you can't run away from.
So you're talking about Sarah Adwoa-Safo?
Precisely, because Michael Quay Jr., who is the son of Professor Michael Quay, attempted unseating Sarah Adwoa-Safo, which didn't work out eventually. I'm not projecting anything, but I'm saying they have history to a certain extent that attention can be paid to. Not just that, he expelled the Fomena MP from Parliament. He declared the seat vacant at a time when the gentleman felt that shouldn't have been the case, and was very firm in his opinion that the speaker was actually wrong. This is history between himself and these individuals, which is a matter of public record. But the point I'm driving at is, after 4 years of serving as speaker, he most likely would have history with MPs in the House on both the majority and the minority side, for which they will like or dislike him, for which they may want to, have him hold on as speaker, or they may want to kick against his candidature. So the point being that it's possible that for the sake of personal relationship, NDC MPs may want to vote for him. You may never know, which is also the case of the chances of it being that NPP MPs may also want to kick against him, regardless of what the Whips would want to whip the said MPs into doing. So we all wait to see. And the dynamics are endless. We all hoping and expecting that all the 275 MPs will be in the chamber this evening to vote. But mind you, when the House begins sitting and an MP is absent, that doesn't stop the processes from unfolding. And there are 275 of them. Both sides will try to get their members in as quickly as possible and have everyone in there. But again, force majeure could happen, which may then, tip how the balance may look like. So we can only count down to see how things would look like, most likely in the next 24 hours or so.
Yes, but Joseph, finally on this. So there's been this whole talk of secret voting. How secret is Parliament secret voting?
So I wish I could quickly quote the standing orders to you in terms of how it spells out the way the secret voting should be done. And it's very categorical that the officials at the office of the clerk will issue papers to MPs. They will write down names of the said individuals that they are voting for who've been proposed as speakers, and go drop it in a box, after which then the counting will be done. Now what happens is that the names are called out one after the other. So you are called, you get to the front, you have both the polling agents, if I could call them so, on both sides, in this case the Whips and the assistants, standing by and observing the processes. So you come take the paper, you walk to a side, go write the name of your choice, and then go get it dropped. as much as possible, it could be secret voting if you keep it secret in terms of going into the space and writing the name. But there have been occasions when people are voting in Parliament, they write down the details of it, they're walking away, they show it to their friends just to make the point that they voted in the direction that was expected and all. Again, the whips, it's supposed to be secret voting, but if the gentleman who or the lady who goes to vote decides to show it to the whip that I went ahead and I voted as such, there is very little you can do about that. So the provisions make room for the voting to be as secretive as possible. But sometimes people need to prove a point to their party, to their whips, to their leadership that they are voting in a particular direction, and may on that basis want to display who they are voting for, which you can do very little about.
Okay, so there's a possibility that they may vote and nobody would know what happens, except that majority chief whip, do I say, or incoming or minority chief whip, we don't know, because both NPP and NDC claim majority under the circumstances. But Frank Anodompre has been tasked to ensure that his first task is ensuring that Mike Oquaye gets elected. And based on your experience in Parliament, how do whips ensure that their choice is what wins during secret voting?
So I'm sure by now a lot of calls are going through from the whips to their members. First of all, urging them to take all the necessary steps and ensure that latest by 10 p.m. this evening they are present here in the House. Funny enough, just about 3 weeks ago, before the House took a break for the Christmas break, the majority leader, Osei Mensah Bonsu, made a very interesting statement on the floor. It was a caution that went out to both majority and minority MPs, and he told them that between when they were taking their break and the 6th of January, MPs should take their security very seriously. He encouraged them that if they're having any peculiar security challenges, they should contact the security team in Parliament for the necessary assistance. And the point he was driving at is that he was urging them to make sure their security is apt and intact, so that everyone will be present on the 9th of the 6th of January to allow for them all to participate in the voting. So I foresee that that's the first thing that the whips will be most keen on, trying to get them to be here by 10 p.m. So putting the calls through to them, and then creating a system of a register of a sort. Like when you show up in Parliament, come report, let's see who has reported, so that from 10 p.m., each of the whips would most likely have a list of every MP that's coming into the chamber. Then maybe around 11:30 thereabouts, they will be cross-checking and looking out for those who may not have showed up by that time. Not just that, especially for those who have some form of history with Professor Mike Oquaye, who is the proposed candidate. I'm sure not just the whips, but the party and even Professor Mike Oquaye himself will most likely by now be putting through calls to them and trying to smoothen things and encourage them to actually, vote for them. And let's not rule out this bit as well, that for those who have demands in terms of wanting to get into positions, whether here in Parliament as committee chairpersons or vice chairpersons, by now the whips are probably getting through to them and they are making their demands and saying, I've been in Parliament all this while. I've not had any leadership position. Now is the time to offer me something like this. If you need my vote, make sure I'm appointed or, chosen chairman eventually. So all of those dynamics are likely to be playing out both on the side of the majority and the minority. And what we can expect is very active campaigning, if I could put it so, although they are all from the same party, and offers will probably be going out to people, demands will be made, and leadership will eventually be whipping up people and saying, you are better off having a speaker from your side than a speaker from the other side. And I've heard that in fact on both sides that is happening, and there are situations where the folks on the NDC side are reaching out to NPP MPs and encouraging them that this is secret voting, so Charlie do wild and flip, and giving them reasons to want to do that. And NPP folks are getting through to NDC MPs and saying, help us bolster our majority, and having those conversations and giving them reasons as to why their vote should flip. But both sides are making the point that they are confident none of their folks will backtrack, and that they would all have their 137, and the former MP would also vote in the direction of the NPP. But again, because it's secret voting, we can only wait and see what will happen.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens. Thank you very much, Joseph Poku Gakpo, who is our parliamentary correspondent, for joining us and telling us about all the lobbying that is going on. So, trying and say, Charlie, join our side, let it flip. We'll see how it goes. It's only some few hours away. We'll wait patiently. But let me get to you, Professor Peter Quartey, because the president also, spoke about the state of the nation. And just some key highlights. He's talked about what the NPP inherited. He's talked about inheriting a 15.4% rate of inflation, 9.3% fiscal deficit, 32% rate of interest, and 3.4% GDP growth rate, which he believes was the lowest in the last 2 decades. That's fact. And he's been talking about the NPP's achievement. But if you look at what the president has done over the period, or what Ghana has become over the period, would you say that the NPP has transformed the state of the Ghanaian economy for the better? Hello, Prof.
Well,
Yes.
I think from the key highlight. Yeah, hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm saying from the data, I'm speaking to data, so I will stick to that. From the data we have, if you look at the inflation figures, you look at key macro indicators like GDP growth, fiscal deficits, and so on and so forth. Yes, one can say that there's been some level of transformation of the Ghanaian economy in the past couple of years. But for COVID, so you saw the analysis the president gave from when he took office, so 2019. Then the issue of COVID also came in. But I must say that even in the midst of COVID, there were attempts to minimize the negative effects of COVID, and we can go on and talk about so many things like the free water, electricity, support to medical staff, and so on and so forth. But yes, to your point, yes, there's been some transformation of the Ghanaian economy, although we would have expected to see more, especially on the side of jobs.
Okay.
Once you grow the economy, you need to translate that into incomes and people's livelihood as well as employment. But we haven't seen a lot on the job creation side, not because not much has been done, but also because we have a backlog. If you look at the number of people that are churned out of our universities and other...
Yes, but Prof, talking about the backlog that we have, now this is a government that says they've created over 2 million jobs. And you rightly have pointed out that all these figures should transform into our individual well-being. And for a government that says they've created 2 million jobs and more, why should jobs be a problem? Is it an indication that maybe, just maybe, the jobs that we're talking about may not be the situation on the ground, Professor Peter Quartey?
Well, the jobs that are being created, 2 million is quite a decent number. However, you will note that some are not new. There are people who move between jobs or who switch jobs. So if it's 2 million, it's not fresh graduates or people who have left school, but you could also find people who are already employed and have moved from one to the other. So that has to be, that point has to be made. Then also, as I mentioned, there's a backlog. For the past how many years, over a decade or so, we've not been creating enough jobs. Manufacturing has gone down. Agriculture sometimes grew at negative growth rates. And the key sectors that employ are manufacturing and agriculture. Services, we don't have high value services. So the kind of jobs we find in services are not as significant as you would want to find or you will find in manufacturing and agriculture. So as I mentioned, there is a huge backlog of unemployed people. And therefore, as you create jobs, you would continually have many who are still unemployed. Then also, you notice the banking sector issue, the cleanup. Yes, it brought stability to the system, yet it also created some unemployment, and we added to the pool of unemployment in the country. COVID also brought its own challenges. Statistical Service data has shown that a lot of companies were not making enough sales. Employment had declined considerably during the COVID era, although it's picking up. So on the side of jobs, I think COVID made things worse, but also we have a backlog of people who have not been employed over the past decade or more, and therefore you cannot expect one regime to employ everybody. And I don't foresee this happening in the next 10 to 15 years. We'll still have unemployment. In the United States, in the UK, and many other places, there is unemployment.
Now, while there's unemployment in the United States and in other parts of the world, in our case, and using the ILO's definition for, those who are seeking employment, you're talking about you cannot be unemployed if you're not looking for a job. So you can only be unemployed if you're looking for a job and you do not get one. And you should be between the ages of 15 to about 63 or 64 years. Now, if you look at Ghana's population dynamics, you're looking at, that particular age bracket, you're looking at between 17 to 20 million. I mean, the Electoral Commission is giving us an indication that you have close to 20 million Ghanaians who are above 18 years. And even there are some of them who are in school. So those cannot be considered to be looking for jobs. Now, if you look at the President's first State of the Nation address, Professor Peter Quartey talked about unemployment rate being about 10%. And you're looking at those who are looking for jobs. So 10% of that figure could give you about 1.7 to 2 million. If you say you have created over 2 million jobs, that should significantly reduce our unemployment rate. Based on all the analysis you've done, Professor Peter Quartey, is it not the case that that figure of a 2 million job creation is a bit of an over-exaggeration? It's a bit of an exaggeration.
Well, I cannot question the source of data because I don't know the source of that data. But let me point that, let's not forget the first State of the Nation address was when 2017. Mm-hmm. Between 2017 and 2020, there's been population growth rate. What is our population growth rate? 2 to 3% per annum. So you need to factor that in. Then also I mentioned about certain happenings in the economy that worsen an unemployment situation. That is COVID-19 is one. The banking sector cleanup is another. So certainly, as you create more jobs, other things within the economy also happens, and we add more to the unemployment pool. So in as much as I don't want to question the source of data, I think that it's possible that even if the figure is correct, in as much as 2 million jobs have been created, you're still likely to have unemployment in the system. You will not be able to employ everybody because population has been growing since 2017. We've also had happenings in the economy. COVID-19 is one. Then also the banking sector cleanup. So that is where we are. But I believe going forward, for me, what do we do going forward? And I think that's where the emphasis should be.
Exactly. And going forward, the President has talked about, setting the tone for us to progress even further. Going forward, what should we be doing?
Well, the good thing is that we have documents that the government has put out. The Obantampa Cares program is one where it talks about stabilizing and revitalizing the economy, investing 100 billion cedis and many others. These are all ideas to revamp the economy. Then also the Ghana at 100 is also a document. Of course, the manifesto itself is also there with all the policies to help enhance some of these indicators. So I believe if we are able to implement them to the latter, then certainly there will be some further transformation. Where I have my difficulty is where we'll find the money.
Why is that a difficulty?
Yeah, because our revenue has not been increasing as much as one would have expected. Our tax revenue as a proportion of GDP is about 15%, far lower than the average for the sub-region. So it tells you we are not mobilizing enough revenue. We are not tax efficient. We are not mobilizing revenue. And you cannot tax the same people over and over again. There's no way we could increase taxes for the same people than to broaden the tax base, which we haven't succeeded over the years. We've not been able to rope in the informal sector. So that for me is the challenge. How do we raise more revenue? We have resorted to borrowing, and I don't think debt is the solution. Yes, we need to borrow if we have a gap. Either we rely on foreign direct investment or we borrow. But to what extent do we rely on borrowing? It has its own repercussions. We've seen our debt GDP figures hitting the threshold, the sustainability threshold. So we ought to be cautious in that respect. That is why I said I have that difficulty. If we can find the money, that would be great. We have, as for the policies and ideas, we have a lot of them.
So when it comes to finding the money, you're saying that, look, enough of the borrowing. We should probably be looking. While you're not against borrowing, you say we should also be looking inwardly to find ways and means of generating the money. But if you look at our first quarter 2021 budget, the interest payments alone and employee emoluments is about 148% of our tax revenue. Clearly, it's not the way to go. So, based on this, would you say that we should be modest in our expenditure in 2021? Particularly all the plans that we talk about. Should we be modest and not be thinking of engaging in all these 88 regional hospitals, 88 district hospitals, 110 hospitals, and lots of infrastructural projects based on the nature of the Ghanaian economy and our ability to generate funds?
Wilson, I will start my response with a question to you. If you were the president of the country and your party needs votes in the next 4 years, would you be modest in your spending or in your the way you tackle things? Especially being a developing country where we have our citizens, we have very high expectations of our government. Yes, so that for me answers the question. We cannot be too modest in our expenditure. What we have to do is to find the money. What you described is tax revenue as a proportion of total spending, but there's non-tax revenue. I don't think we have tapped much into non-tax revenue. We have a lot of state-owned enterprises that are loss-making, that are becoming a drain on the national purse. That is why, for me, I was excited that we have SIGA being set up. The idea is that it's going to make them efficient so that they rather contribute to the national kitty than being dependent on the national kitty. So I expect SIGA to be up and doing and do what is being set up to do. So our state-owned enterprises will generate more revenue. We have other non-tax revenue like property rates and other areas. Property rates, we have not done very well in collecting them. Sometimes there are a lot of leakages because we've not digitized some of the systems. People go around, collect them, whether they end up in the right accounts, we don't know. So I think there are different avenues for raising money, apart from taxation, which we have not been efficient. So that should be the way. That is why the digitization idea is to be pursued vigorously, so that we minimize the human interface, paperless support system and many other things. We minimize the human interface. We minimize discretion. But when discretion comes in, then corruption and bribery and all the other things also come in. I strongly believe that we should look into that direction as well and raise more revenue. We cannot stop borrowing completely, but then our appetite for borrowing to reduce considerably, while we look inward and raise more revenue domestically. Because as you mentioned, when we pay and we service our debts, we pay for compensation, wages and salaries, and then statutory payments. We are left with virtually nothing. We have little for capital expenditure. That is why you and some people will say they haven't felt the year of roads, for instance, have not felt it. Some will say they haven't felt development in their locality. Yes, because once we spend servicing our loans and many other things, there's very little left for us except to go and borrow again. So we continue moving in that cycle, borrow, finance, development, expenditure, and then there's nothing left. Then you go and borrow again. And I think we need to gradually break from that cycle.
All right, Professor Peter Quartey, thank you very, very much for joining us. We're very grateful to you.
My pleasure.
Well, fascinating stuff there. Of course, it's good that we've been able to spend a bit of time on what the president had to say about the economy, but he had a lot more to say. We'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are on the State of the Nation address, where your expectations met. We'll be reading a few of your tweets in a short while, but stay with us. When we come back, we're going to be wrapping up on what to expect tonight as we bring you live coverage in your election headquarters of the big vote in Parliament. Stay with us.
My paddy, why you for just the watch when you can be wild proper? When you for scream, shout, cheer and kasa, put your body, get down, fire your body, catch views, drop the mic. Ghana, the time catch when we for change the way we watch. Welcome to Showmax and to Chow Online Entertainment, from movies and series to sports like EPL and La Liga. Feel from Super Sport and more. You feel enjoy them on any device, anytime. Visit showmax.com today. Men's lucky.
As a passenger, you have a lot of power in avoiding car accidents. The National Road Safety Authority wants you to use your voice to save lives. Speak up if your driver is overspeeding, drink driving, overtaking wrongfully, or using their mobile phone. And if your driver is tired, please make them stop and rest. Road safety is a shared and collective responsibility, so let's look out for ourselves, protect each other, and arrive alive. Thank you.
Everyone needs you alive. Arrive alive.
My name is Deborah Pando, the Executive Director of Quintech Initiative and an agricultural engineer by profession. I love food and mathematics. I love physics too, the reason for being an engineer. Not just any engineer, but an agricultural engineer.
Ghanaian female engineer Deborah Opando, co-founder of Quintech Initiative, is making Gari processing easier with a cassava grater developed by her. This Wednesday on the Joy Business Van, Deborah shows us her innovation, which is helping over 30 rural communities.
We realized that most women who process Gari in the rural areas grated by hand, manually, which was dangerous, inefficient, very laborious, and time-wasting. So we decided to work on the graters and presses.
Deborah Opando, co-founder of Quintech Initiative, this Wednesday on the Joy Business Van. It is powered by Joy Business and supported by EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Coffee in your cup and Joy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best bet on Joy 99.7 FM. Joy 99.7 FM. Mumpini machi and you been a kumanji. Buesia connectivity. Atia Trema. What do we cut from Brafo? Me Chiam.
Joy 99.7 FM.
For all my people, this time I go up my twafeting. Get in here, I said no. Tougher, but you're seeing what's up. See me good, JJ. You see, I didn't sign ya or Sani P. Sandwich, could be self picket, the second wopo, and young condombre, and can't yen Sammy whom could pay. No, come on, meaning and pay, from back to of Chocoto, papi, I go on from Opa to me, perfect. potty, Miss Ambo Sambo, my team free to trade. There's a Harry Kongma, room,
Oh yeah, Ohene, and that's Obrafour there. Oh, love the guy. Love the guy, and there will be more from him on the 90s Jam. We'll tell you all about that. So stay with us. We're going to be reading your tweets very soon, and you've been sending some very, very interesting tweets about our conversation so far. Stay tuned, and we will share them. First, though, text messages on the Super Morning Show are brought to you by Glyco Critical Illness Plan, GSIP. It's in your best interest to survive. Glyco, of course, cares about you, so they don't want you to fall sick and not be able to claim any of your insurance. So they want you to please go to their offices, Glyco Life offices, or their website, which is glycolife.com, to lodge your claims for prompt service. Now, we're all surviving COVID-19 together. So the advice here is that you must pay your premiums via your chosen mode of payment or by Momo. The number is 0591 441 473. Okay, remember that number, that all-important number. Also, you can pay by e-premium for microinsurance to safeguard your policy, or call the call center if you have any questions. The number is 0202 222 113, or just call them via contact them via any of their digital channels. Now, they care for your safety, so all offices will be implementing the Ghana Health Service protocols. Okay. Please practice social distancing, keep safe, and trust Glyco Life to cushion you for life. All right, so a few of your tweets have been coming in, and I'm looking for a particular one to read, a very fascinating one. It's a question to our lawyer, and it's from, let's have a look here, who sent this one in. Kofi Amwa sent this tweet in, and he says, could you please ask Benedicta, should the 8th Parliament be sworn in without representation for Saul, will any act or law passed by that same Parliament be binding on them? All right, we'll get an answer from Benedicta in a moment. But a few more tweets. At Kwesi Hornsby says, the only time both parties of MPs have come together is to demand 600,000 ex gratia for serving for just 4 years. When we lack investment in our road networks and hospitals, this is daylight robbery and must not be condoned in any way. At No More Tears says, he, Nanado, never expressed empathy towards the family of the 3 who lost their lives at Techiman South. He's insensitive, and the follow-up comment by Joe Wise shows that the NPP had already declared those people guilty. It is very pathetic. Another one by at G. Kofi Amwa. He says, we are making precedents like Ghana just won independence in its 4th republic. Okay, we're making precedents. Okay. He continues, he says, hey, Kujo, the bites from this mother serpent won't have an antivenom. You. His _ excellent Ato says, President Akufo-Addo and John Mahama, Mr. President, with all due respect, raised fists. Do you have to raise big billboards advertising your swearing in as a president? It's a waste of taxpayers' money. Even if it's coming from your party, it can be directed to something important rather than billboards. Mami Enim says the former MP cost NPP the majority. I don't know why people see him as a victim. If he hadn't contested, the NPP would have won the seat. Okay, well, Mami Enim, not everybody is NPP.
Why should he not contest? I mean, he has the right to vote and be voted for, and he contested and won.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, if the NPP don't see him as a victim or whatever, that's the NPP. Not everybody is NPP, right?
Yeah.
Okay, one more. Kafui says our MPs are not independent. Nothing will change. Thank you all for your tweets. Now, let's wrap up in the studio with our guests and with our team. You guys are not guests anymore. I think I'll start with you, Benedicta. There was a question, and then you can give your final thoughts on the President's State of the Nation address. That's what we're wrapping up on. So tell us what you liked about it, and then tell us what you wished you had heard in it.
Okay, so the question, just in response to the question. Yes, indeed, all laws that would be enacted by the parliament would be binding on the people of Seoul. But I think what is important is that they've taken the matter up and they filed a human rights action in the high courts, hoping that their rights would be upheld. Coming to the State of the Nation's address, I think I was particularly happy to hear the president say that yes, there's peace in Dagbon, although there's some lingering issues that we have to still look at, but also acknowledging that peace came about through concerted efforts from various stakeholders that were involved in this peace process. What I wasn't particularly happy about was his refusal or neglect to acknowledge the current state of our security as a nation, and also raising concerns about the Electoral Commission.
Right.
I think all well-meaning Ghanaians have actually expressed concern about some of the actions of the Electoral Commission, and for him to be seen or to be heard to be saying that it was a free, fair election, it is one that beats my imagination. And coming to the economy, I think, yes, good indications, but going forward, I think that, yes, we know that 2021, we really don't have the fiscal space. And so our expenditure has to be looked at again, and the various loopholes plugged. He spoke about the planting for food and jobs, but anybody in the agri sector will tell you that with that policy, we've seen a lot of fertilizer being smuggled out of the country. So although we are having fertilizer subsidy programs for Ghanaian farmers, a lot of them are not benefiting from that program because a lot of that fertilizer is basically seeping through the country. So yes, we have to all come together and build consensus going into the next administration of the president, and that is if after the petition he is still remains the president. Yeah.
All right.
I think it was good. It was brief. I mean, generally, when you are wrapping up, and when we were off, I was talking about what happened President Mohammed's last address. I mean, a lot of the time, the things that you will talk about are the same things you've been talking about in the last few years. And if you've listened to the president closely, and even the vice president, the same figures they've made reference to about how the economy they found, where they took it to, and the events that happened subsequently. What I found interesting was the bit about Galamsey. And he says, we need to have a conversation. And this morning I was having quite a heated debate with some colleagues in the newsroom because I found it a bit strange in a sense that 4 years back we were told that he's putting the presidency on the line to deal with it. I mean, the fight has become what we all know it to be. There are allegations of the tax force taking monies and setting people free. There are issues about key individuals, foreigners who missing excavators, people who should have been prosecuted, who were not prosecuted and allowed to leave our shores. All those issues have come up strongly. And so if at the end of the term we are now told, okay, we have to have a conversation, it tells you that, I mean, it appears in his mind there are still some, it's not turned out how he expected it to go. Either by government's own doing or those he appointed to do something that they couldn't do. Either way, clearly it didn't turn out how he wanted, and so something needs to be done about it. I thought that was a very key point that we should talk about going forward. I look forward to the first budget, the budget proper, because we just had a budget for about 4 months, and how it will deal with issues, because in the last 6 months, and I'm sure there's a point that Winston will agree with, we've spent so much on the social interventions that we are actually not paying attention to, and we are extending it by 3 months again. And so, aside from needing money for all the other hospitals that Winston engaged Professor Korte on, we have to now look at how much we have spent on the intervention programs and how we can even find space to sustain the already existing ones like free senior high school that will remain. And so I look forward to the first budget, and I didn't need an answer in this particular address because obviously he's now even going to set up his government, and some of the ministers will not be back, I'm told. Winston, what do you pick?
Well, Machiavelli has this famous saying that he who thinks of how life ought to be is on a path of destruction, but he who thinks of how life is on a path of preservation. Look, we are in a situation where we're thinking of how life ought to be. Governments are supposed to do this, governments are supposed to do that, governments are supposed to do which other one. But the truth is, you cannot afford it. So under the circumstances, you think of how life is. Your current situation will tell you how you go about your expenditure. And talking about that, let me just make a correction. So we're talking about a budget deficit of 9.8% that the government inherited. Following the rebasing of the economy, that reduced to 6.3%. I just had to make that correction. Yes, very brief. I would have loved to hear something about the persons who died as a result of electoral violence, and I was disappointed not to hear that. And we've talked about how the president has a chance to do that tomorrow when he during his inauguration. But I'd say that, look, so if you put your presidency on the line to fight Galamsey, the thing that you know is illegal, why do you need a conversation again on it? To tell us what? That is not legal? But we know it is illegal. Did we not have this conversation when we decided to fight Galamsey? Look, sometimes the essence of a decentralized government is to ensure ownership of government policies. And you ensure ownership when you consult the people. The top-down approach is why we are in the situation in which we find ourselves. And I've said it before. Whenever I'm going to my hometown, I hear people doing Galamsey. I hear them. Even though they have Adom small-scale mining. Some also do illegal mining. You hear them. But who are you to go and say it? Because we have not engaged the people. And that's our failure.
I'll tell you what I liked about the president's State of the Nation address. He kept the focus on the fact that they were seeking to implement the things they have already said they would do, rather than giving a new list of promises. And I liked that focus, especially since we're cash-strapped. That ought to be the way forward. It also suggests that in his second term, there is perhaps a hope that he's not going to be as concerned about the politics as he will be about his legacy. So I was happy about that. It's a good indicator. I do wish that I had heard a bit more about the state of our nation in comparison to other nations. I think that's important. Very often we talk about our country as if it's the only country in the world. But sometimes we must measure ourselves against those with whom we started, those who we look up to, and see whether we're moving forward or backwards. And that's an important way of assessing where we are and who we are. Listen, I want to thank all of you for your time with us this morning. Benedicta, Akable, and of course our own squad, Churchill and Inimwa and Sami and K-Fresh and everyone. Listen, we're back tomorrow with another edition of the Super Morning Show, but stay with Joy, okay? Because from 10 o'clock, we'll be coming to you live from Parliament, and then, of course, from 10 p.m., we'll bring you everything leading up to the death of the seventh Parliament and the life of the eighth Parliament. Stay tuned for that and more. My name is Kojo Yankson. It's always a pleasure. Enjoy your day.